Okay, hello again, guys. So last video we just finished talking about these choices and actions worksheet that you would have done, and now we're going to jump into the task. So right down here at the critical and historical part of the task, we're going to be exploring art making practice. And you've done this through Von Gerard and Fred Williams. Now you're going to choose one of these artists for yourself. So I'm hoping that you've all chosen one that you've somewhat engaged with. You might find there's a lot of information, probably more so on these top three and the bottom one if you haven't started yet. These two are a little bit less known, but you should be able to find some good information on these. I might post a question on Classroom to see who's doing what and see if I can find any extra resources for you. So you're going to complete the following task in the template. Now there should be a link that you can access and it has to be in that template for me so it stays organized. We're going to go through the support document now, and I've got that and it's posted to today's post. So the first one, provide 2 images of artworks and their citations. So guys, what a citation is, if I just scroll back up to our support document, a citation is simply the little plaque that you see at an art gallery. Okay, so you'll see the artist's name, the date of their birth, their location, the name of the artwork, the date it was produced, and the materials. So that's a little citation, and that's what you'll be using for your work. So what I'm going to be flicking to here is the support document for Year 11 Art Component Task 1, which I will share with you today. So there's the model of what it should look like. Try and get better images than I have. This is just scanned from a book. So get 2 nice images, colour images of the artworks and put in their citation. So that's super easy. That is task or question 1, as you'll see here. Number 2, you're going to be filling out the art making practice scaffold, the same one that you filled out for Von Gerard with your artist. So I've said there 300 words approximately. You can use dot points here and that is fine, and that's worth 10 marks. Citations, oh, I was kind. The citations are worth an easy 5 marks, so make sure you get that done. And number 2 is worth 10 marks, that's the scaffold. And number 3, we're going to jump into this in a moment. Analyse the relationship between your artist's material and conceptual practice. In your response, you must highlight CACA language, and it needs to be 400 to 500 words, and that is worth 15 marks. That's the assessment. The marking criteria you'll be able to see down here. Okay, and you can see the marking range there. So that's the task. The template in which you'll be filling out looks like this. So nice and easy for you to fill out. You need to put your name, the artist that you've chosen, the 2 images of the artworks, and the citations being basically done for you. You've just got to fill out the information, and that's easy. So that's the first task there. The art making practice scaffold. This should look familiar. It's the same as Von Gerard, as I've said. So look, there might be a little bit of crossover of information, and look, that's okay. There's going to be, for example, signs and symbols might cross over to influences or ideas and intentions. So dot points here are fine, but it's just a way of organizing and researching some information, synthesizing it into these categories in order to get our head around the grey or the conceptual practice, the black, the material practice. Because in the next question, you're analysing the relationship between the grey, conceptual, and the black, material. So first off, we need to know what they are. So that's what you're doing. You're gaining research and you're putting that information into that table. Please don't start number 3 until you've done that table. Okay, so you'll still probably be working on that, finding research off the internet, and some quotes just for a little bit of background, because you will be writing about one of these artists in your end of year exam. Okay, and this comes to question 3. So let's go to our support document. For question 2, there's your practice scaffold. There is an example. So if you're wondering what to write within each box, there's an example for you to do there. So that's question 2. Question 3, right, we really need to break this one down. I'm trying to prepare you here for essays, and this is almost like a little mini essay that you will be writing. So we're going to look at the question, we're going to break down the question and look at what we need to answer. We're going to look at a scaffold and a sample response. Please, please, please use this. All you need to do is replace the information with your artist. So the question is, analyse the relationship between your artist's material and conceptual practice. Analyze. Analyze means, according to Nessa, identify the components and the relationship between them. Draw out and relate implications. So what are the components of our question? Our components are material practice and the conceptual practice. The relationship between them is how they interact. So what idea? How is it created? This goes back to the basis of what we've been doing all term. That is the relationship. It's this. This here is the relationship. So in order for us to identify, let's come back to here, breaking down the question, identifying the components. I'll just zoom in a little bit. Okay, what are the components? What is the artist's conceptual practice? You've already found that out in the table. So what their intentions, what ideas are communicated. Then, what is the artist's material practice? Again, that is in the table. What choices and actions the artist takes with techniques or visual language. They're the components. To answer the question, we need to identify the relationship between them. So in doing this, we need to answer that age-old question. What are the ideas, meaning and intention, and how are they communicated? If you answer that, you're answering the question. So here's a scaffold for your response. We might actually read through a response first before we go into breaking this down. Actually, we'll read through this. Sorry, guys. The introduction. So you're going to write a little introduction and one paragraph. Your first sentence is going to be explain what both material and conceptual practice is. That's showing me your knowledge of what these two things are. Next, make a statement about how material practice is driven by conceptual practice. The next two sentences, 1 to 2 sentences, you'll introduce your artist, name, art movement, date, location of their practice, and their influences. Show me a bit of background. What have you learned? In the next 2 sentences, you're going to make some general statements about the artist's material practice and conceptual practice and the relationship between them. I've done this further down the response, so it hopefully should make sense soon. Then you have one paragraph. Be nice and easy on you, only one paragraph. In the first 2 to 3 sentences, you're going to introduce the artwork, provide any background or context, and describe the subject matter and composition. Remember what you see and how it's been arranged in the artwork. You've got some really good vocab lists for this, and they're in your book, but they're also linked in at the end of this document. The next 2 sentences, identify the idea, meaning, intention explored in this work, in this specific work. Then 5 to 8 sentences, make statements about the techniques or visual language used and what meaning is created. This is the relationship. What idea and how is it created? Aim to identify at least 4 techniques and their idea created. So this, what you're doing here in this 5 to 8 sentences is this. When you read through my response, and we're going to do that now, this has come directly from my response, or this goes directly into my response. These are my 5 sentences. I've said 4 for you guys, but I've identified 5 techniques. So these here are going to go directly into your response. So let's have a little look. Again, I'm talking about Fred Williams here. We'll talk about the colours in just a moment. You should know what they are. Okay, here's my introduction. You need to, I don't want to give it all away, you need to use a sentence explaining material and conceptual practice, then a sentence explaining how material practice is driven by conceptual practice. So you can fluff those up. Okay, Fred Williams was an innovative Australian expressionist artist working in the 1960s and 1970s who was heavily influenced by the Australian Heidelberg artist's sense of space and light. He, however, updated these traditions, experiencing the areas firsthand whilst pioneering and capturing a new vision of the Australian landscape. Williams daringly captured the unique beauty and the ruggedness of rural Australia, a landscape which many deemed unremarkable. These ideas were captured through his expressive, semi-abstract and gestural style, which suggested rather than realistically represented the landscape, only often distinctly defined by the line of where the land meets the sky. So that there is my little introduction. So that's following this scaffold here. Now, that introduction is me showing the marker or the reader my knowledge about this artist. I have defined his material and conceptual practice in there, given a little bit of background, his style, and you'll notice the orange. I've added in adjectives, colourful language, the red, art words, art vocab words, and the blue are words to do with practice, content words. What you'll notice is missing from this paragraph though is what? The green. Because in the introduction, I haven't asked you to draw out any implications, any relationships. Not yet. We're just stating facts. Okay? We're just stating. We're not drawing conclusions about relationships. So that's the introduction. Now on to the paragraph. Again, following the scaffold that was above. Upwey Landscape 2 in italics, brackets, date 1965, is one of Williams' most notable artworks, which was undertaken after he moved to Upwey in the foothills of the Dandenong Ranges in 1963. The semi-abstract work suggests a landscape which is ravaged by ferocious fires, defined by Williams' signature horizon line situated near the top of the work, which separates the dry land and the cool sky. Beneath lie swirls of black and brown paint that are repeatedly dabbed and scattered across the work. Now, what I just did there in these sentences here was describe the subject matter and composition. That came directly from here, from my table in Choices and Actions. Next, conceptual practice. Williams' intention was to explore the monotony and the vastness of the Australian landscape, while still capturing the quiet beauty of this ever-changing land, in which he achieved through his choices and actions with materials and techniques. So I'm reminding the marker there that I'm on track. I know that I'm talking about practice, hence the blue words. Right, from here on in, from here to here, are literally these statements, one after the other. The selection of a limited muted colour palette of browns and blacks emphasised the lack of colour in the work, suggesting the sheer impact on which the fires had on the landscape. The scattered violent dabs and swirls of paint represent the different clusters of foliage or clumps of soil in which were once flourishing. The repetitiveness of these, along with the stark horizon line, further implies the monotony and endlessness of such an arid landscape. The flicks of more natural colours such as mauve, green, pink and pink are stark reminders of the damage inflicted by the fires, but it also provides a sense of hope through new growth and vegetation. Although this artwork is largely abstract, a landscape is depicted and depth is created through the slight decrease in the size of the trees. This further symbolises both the endlessness and the repetitiveness of the landscape, which is void of humanity. This work becomes even more meaningful due to the fact Williams himself fought these fires protecting his own home and then used this as his workplace. Guys, can you look at this response? I'll just leave it there. You'll notice that I have italics something and I've underlined something. Have a little look through this response. What statements have I italiced? And what statements have I underlined? What you will notice, the underlined are the techniques or the visual language or the material practice. The italic text are the ideas. If you're able to do this through your response and you have an even spread of both, it means that you are identifying material and conceptual practice. If you have the green words throughout your response, there are connective language that is showing the relationship between, emphasizes, it represents, created through, further implies, suggests this. That is drawing the relationships between, hence we are answering the question. What is the material practice, conceptual, and what's the relationship between them? And that's what your green words are doing. So, but guys, I hope you use this response. Like I said, that follows